Yeah, my name is Alexander Borum. I'm Danish, and I'm with the PLF 2023-2024, and I work on European security and defense policy, looking at how our EU missions work in the great abroad and how we can advance our interests. And I anchored a lot to the Russian invasion of Ukraine that kind of changed the whole security dynamic for Europe, and now pushing security and defense into our like the very front of our mindset. Interesting but tough topic these days. For me, it's been some intense months. I think landing here and getting introduced to everybody, that alone was a quite significant ordeal in a very positive way. There's so many people here doing so many cool things. Getting plugged into what was going around at the university, what different researchers were working on, and so on. Just getting the introductions done, that took up a lot of time and effort that you don't really think about, but that's been a really rewarding part of it, kind of getting to touch upon different topics and so on, getting introduced to, things you might not touch upon in your, day-to-day career. Then in terms of the work, I've been quite engaged in a project with the EU Institute for Security Studies on how EU missions can address foreign interference and disinformation in their work. Kind of working under the disguise of the EU integrated approach, where each different EU tool can kind of work well together. But where the challenge is with that is that it's a kind of informal kind of setup. It's more of a overarching concept than an actual policy. So executing anything in this domain becomes very complicated because you need to really think in a lot of different EU actors and so on. So that's taken up a lot more time than I thought it would, but it's super fun. And luckily, there's a good cooperation with colleagues here at the STG who's working on these things. And the CFI dialogues is coming up here in June with colleagues, and I'm very much looking forward to that. And then, of course, talking to the general public about things that's interesting. So I just wrote an opinion piece for Euronews on security and defense in the elections, pushing that a little bit as a topic that people need to think about, not direct them to where they need to vote, but just telling them, you need to vote and you need to think about this when you cast your ballot. And then, of course, working with the students wherever I can, doing some mentoring and doing workshops and so on, both for master students, but also for fellows and staff and so on. So I've been around a little bit. So in terms of mentoring and engaging with students, kind of guiding people into the field, it's something that I've done on a hobby level for quite a few years now. And here I was lucky enough to be assigned 2 mentees, both of them exceedingly strong, so they don't really need me so much. But that's very much also part of the fun, right? Like you get different people when you do mentoring work. I got 2 that need sparring more than they need guidance, and that's super, because then it's more of a discussion and it's very free flowing, and they can kind of tap me in to where I need to be if there is anything. So we've had some good conversations, and I think it's something that's going to continue even after I leave here. So the door is open. They can always come with questions or get a bit of sparring if they hit a snag or a particular challenge. Sometimes that's very useful to have in the backhand. And then more broadly, I gotta say here, the student body is very well dressed for what comes after. It's a super tough field to get into, and I know that the STG is doing a lot to kind of bulk up the practical side of it. That's very much omitted in other settings. So, that's a huge plus for the master's program here. I've worked a bit specifically on the importance of networking, both in person, but also on social medias like LinkedIn, because you can be so and so good, but if you're not the one selected, you never get a chance to kind of show off what you can really do. And knowing the right people can sometimes, it won't secure your job per se, but it might mean that you get a few extra seconds where somebody looks at your CV and you get a fighting chance. And that's really what people need. So, having that at the back of your mind when you're going out there as a student, or when you're entering the job market and have your first few, internships, traineeships, or whatever you get into, like having that at the back of your mind, a few skills, a few practical examples, and so on that you can build upon, is something I find very useful. And from what I can hear from the participants, it's also been quite useful for them. So it's also fun. It's very rewarding, and it's always nice to help out people. And for me, every so often somebody comes back and they've landed somewhere super cool, and it's nice to have that contact for me. So I get that benefit from it. But that good karma is really what it's all about, I find. I like to keep things kind of informal and so on. So it's been very much meeting here at the university or meeting at cafes and so on, both with my formal mentees, but then I also have students that's just coming and asking for advice on specific things. And then, we grab a coffee or Aperol Spritz, and we sit and we talk it through. And very often that's already helpful. And then I try to do check-ins. Of course, now it's been a tough period with thesis writing and internships and so on. So people are a bit scattered. They have to focus elsewhere. So, we have a down period. But then now when things are submitted and, you're wrapping things up, now is a period where you might, re-engage the talks a little bit. You might have specific, experiences from internships, or you might have new ideas after writing your thesis that you want to kind of bring forward. Then, I'll be here for a bit. But, we live in a world post-COVID where getting in touch is very easy, and firing up a Zoom call and having a virtual coffee is very much a possibility. So on the mentoring side, it's very informal, very straightforward. Also to keep it easy for all parties involved. That's really it. So we have guidelines that we sort of follow, and we look what's applicable and what's not. So we decide on the procedure ourselves, and we've all decided to keep it somewhat informal instead of having like a formal procedure that we try to follow. Again, it has to be tailored to the individual mentee, I find. And then more broadly for the open things, it's been like a lecture workshop oriented, with the option to follow up in one-on-one settings. Sometimes it might be a little bit tough to like pull up your LinkedIn or your CV and getting like constructive criticism in a group setting. And I'm very easy to approach, so I keep the door open, and if anybody wants to have a chit chat about whatever in their career building, then that's always an option. So a few people have reached out, and we've been going through best practices for CVs and for letters of motivation, and polishing off some profiles and so on LinkedIn, and that's fun. I mean, both sitting down in person and like going through on a computer like step by step, taking the whole spiel, but also informal emails or messages or whatever. I mean, the bar is pretty low when it comes to the content. It's more about providing a solution to whatever challenges or problems that's really there. So there's no cookie cutter solution to it. Everything has been very informal, very flexible. I also try to learn a little bit about what other people do, but that's usually people who's like a bit like influencers or HR professionals and so on. But actual professionals working in the field, I don't go out and survey. But this was like a very nice focus group to have, and kind of get some new insights, and also new ideas of where other people want to take their online use of for example LinkedIn, that I also find to be very useful approaches. So I think my recommendations for the incoming cohort would probably be to keep your work plan light. When I applied, I had a very packed work plan. I was very ambitious with a lot of outputs and so on, and I've made 1 out of 5 of the outputs that I dreamt of having. Just because there's so much going on that you're not anticipating. I mean, there's the contact hours where we do seminars, and where we have, different, we have alumni coming in, and we have different people from the university coming and presenting research and so on. All these things are super interesting. There's so much going on here. So, I would be able to keep busy even not working on anything, because there's just so much to do here. And you don't really anticipate that. Like, I came from the outside, I knew of EUI a little bit. Didn't know the fellowship, didn't know anybody who had been here, so I came in pretty blank. And what I really realized was that there was a surprising amount of events and opportunities here. So having the space to go out, network with researchers here, network with the students. I mean, talk to people who's associated with this institution. You have a lot of different interesting profiles here. You have a lot of policymakers coming in. So there is just a lot of opportunities if you're, willing to pursue them. And that's really, that's something that's hard to account for when you're doing your pre-planning. You come in with your idea that you're going to spend, 5-10 months in Florence. It's going to be great. Wine and food and culture is there. So, and then you come in with your super nerdy project that you're really passionate about, but you don't really leave space for the rest. And that's really, my big thing. Like, make a bit of space, be open to what this place has to offer, because there's just so much.